Do you believe that the true Sabbath has never changed? Well, where do you get it from? Does it say that in Scripture? Well, let's look into the details of what the Scripture actually says. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. So this is obviously talking about scriptural doctrines if it says the times and the laws were to wear out the saints of the Most High. And even in 2nd Baruch, it says that there will be a change of times because man will be practicing oppression and not walking in Torah. And Jubilees confirms that we will forget his Sabbaths and the rest of his festivals. Since 358 AD, they've been changing the Most High's calendars to wear out his saints. So now the same people that changed the times is just going to tell us what time it is, and that the 7-day Adventists got it right. Yeah, no. Did you know that there is a verse removed concerning the Sabbath day? Well, let's get into the details. This verse can only be found in the Septuagint. It's in Amos chapter 6. Ye who are approaching the evil day, who are drawing near, adopting false Sabbaths. Now, what if I told you that the Bible gives us clarity on what is the actual false Sabbath this verse is referring to? Let's start off right here in Amos. Who are the people Amos is talking about? In verse 2, it's clearly talking about the house of Israel that has fallen into idol worship. Chapter 5 establishes what chapter 6 was talking about. And in the end of chapter 5, he's talking to the house of Israel when he says, I hate and I reject your feast, and I will not smell your meat offerings in your general assemblies. Why is he rejecting their feast? In verse 26, yea, ye took up the tabernacle of Moloch, the star of your god Remphan, the images of them which ye made for yourselves. So they were worshiping Moloch, lifting up the star of Remphan, and then they started adopting false Sabbaths. Now let's go to the New Testament, where it's the only other time where Remphan is mentioned. So Stephen is actually quoting from Amos, because the same practices that were happening then is happening in his time. You took up the tent of Moloch, the star of your god Remphan. So at this time, Israelites are still doing the same exact thing that was mentioned in the Old Testament. So this is the same practices, worshiping the same gods and lifting up the same star. So who are these people Stephen is talking to? In verse 58 in the same chapter, then they cast him out the city and stoned him. And the witnesses laid down their garments at the feet of a young man named Saul. So the group of Israelites that Stephen was preaching to about the star of Remphan worshiping Moloch was led by Saul, which later became Paul. Which leads us to Galatians chapter 1, verse 13, when Paul writes, which was Saul, for you have heard of my former life in Judaism, how I prosecuted the church of God violently and tried to destroy it. So the group of people that stoned Stephen for Moloch worship was in Judaism, because Saul was so extremely zealous to carry on the traditions of his fathers. From the book of Amos to the book of Acts, the Old and the New Testament, nothing has changed. This is still Moloch worship. This is still the star of Remphan. So where does that leave us with the Sabbath day? The false Sabbath is Judaism's Sabbath. Is keeping the Saturday Sabbath every year angel worship? Well, let's get into the details. Let's start off in Jubilees chapter 6. And all the children of Yisrael will forget and will not find the paths of the years, and will forget the new moons and seasons and Sabbaths, and they will go wrong as to all the order of the years. So anybody spreading doctrine saying that the Sabbath has never changed or hasn't been forgotten is contradicting scripture. Now in verse 35, for I know, and from henceforth I will declare it unto you, and it is not of my own devising, for the Sefer lies written before me, and on the heavenly tablets the division of the days is ordained, lest they forget the feast of the covenant, and walk according to the feast of other nations, after their error and after their ignorance. And because of this, we will make unclean days feast days, mixing the holy with the unclean, and the unclean day with the holy. For this reason, they will go wrong as to the new moons and seasons and Sabbaths and feasts, and they will eat all kinds of blood with all kinds of flesh. Now, Jubilees is going to put in perspective Colossians chapter 2, which I believe where Paul got this understanding from. Let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink, because there will be those that will eat all kinds of blood with all kinds of flesh, not following the food law, in respect of an holy day or new moon or Sabbath day. They will go wrong to the new moon, seasons, Sabbaths, and feasts. Same idea. Now let's bring this understanding all together in these next two verses in Colossians 2, which are a shadow of things to come, but the body is of Messiah. Everything mentioned is a representation of our Messiah. Our Messiah is the living word. He is the Torah. And in following him, we should be keeping the Torah in the appointed days. But what happens if we forget the covenant and walk according to the feast of other nations after their error and after their ignorance? Let no man beguile you of your reward in voluntary humility and worshiping of angels. In Genesis 1:14, it says, let them, being the moon and the sun, be for signs, for seasons, for days, and for years. That being said, using those, you cannot find the Sabbath being on Saturday every year. It's literally impossible, because Saturday was already determined to be Saturn's day of worship all the way from 321 AD. So what are the odds that the star of Remphan literally means Saturn, and that this star happens to be on the flag of the people that worship on Saturn's day? Why do you think the days of the week are named after fallen angels? It's a sign of worship. Watch this video to find a true Sabbath.